Hello, and welcome to our Win X Today session with one of the most amazing guests. I'm so grateful and happy to have here today Marina with us. She is a wellness and mindset coach. She's doing lots and lots of great things for busy professionals, is also providing virtual wellness workshops for corporates and other companies. And today, under the umbrella of this World Mental Health Day, we will talk about mental well-being, tips that you can apply straight away at home, tools and techniques and everything what is on her heart. So without any further ado, inviting you here to us, thank you so much for your time. Would you mind and would you like to start to just share a few words about yourself, Marina?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sylvia, for having me. This is such an important topic that I'm super passionate about. I started as a more traditional health coach. So I worked with professionals in the areas of nutrition, of exercise, of sleep. And then throughout the past 6 months with the quarantine and coronavirus and all the world events that have been happening, I really pivoted to focusing on stress. So what I realized is that someone could be doing all things right as far as eating healthy, exercising, outwardly being a good picture of health. But if we don't manage our stress and our mental well-being, those are things that we can't overtly see that someone is struggling with. That's really what it's all about. So you could be doing all things right, but if those two things are not managed by you, and if you don't have the right tools and techniques for how to reduce your stress, how to deal with stress internally, and how to maintain a good mental well-being in despite of all the events that are happening in the world, I just thought that was now a way more relevant topic given everything that the world has gone through 2020. So now I do still some traditional health coaching, but I've really pivoted to using mindfulness as a tool for both stress reduction and better mental well-being, as well as some other ways and methods that I focus on as far as stress management goes. So my background is in health coaching. I'm certified in that, but then I also have my yoga and meditation certifications, which has been just so helpful throughout this time. So.
Thank you so much for sharing. I am a yoga and meditation teacher as well, got certified around this topic. So we share lots and lots of things and have many things in common. But before we will dive into this whole topic, I would like to start with the stigma around exactly what you've just said, the stress, maybe even feeling anxious, or some of us might even feel burned out at the moment within this kind of overall, like you said, maybe quarantine, maybe corona, depending on where you are, we are all impacted in one or another way, but for sure in the way how we basically get bombarded via media, manipulated via media. And I would like to start and ask you, do you have any personal experience by yourself that brought you actually to this topic about health, nutrition, and of course also beyond, like you've just mentioned, to go really inside?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I started my career in corporate world. So I was a consultant. I was traveling a lot. I switched to project and program management. So I'm super familiar with the way the corporate world works, lots of deadlines, managing others, projects, stacking one on top of the other, especially with travel. When I was traveling quite a bit as a consultant, that was a whole additional burden to managing your stress when you're also traveling a lot, so you're not in one location for too long. And so, yeah, my own journey with stress started in about 2015. And that's where I really understood the impact that stress has, not just both on our physical body, but on our mental health. So physically, I realized that I'm someone who's really stress sensitive. So I could feel disrupted sleep, heart palpitations, anxious feelings, overwhelmed, like first thing in the morning when waking up. All of those things were a result of just this unhealthy lifestyle that I was living and all that added stress that I wasn't even aware of that was there, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we just get used to living with it for such long periods of time, and we just take stress and overwhelm as just a given of our busy life. So that was both manifesting in a physical way for me. And then mentally, I would work through the weekend sometimes, and that was also disrupting my social relationships, my sleeping patterns, and it was only exacerbating all of these different symptoms. So it's like it's a stacking effect, right? Once you're not sleeping well, you are not, you're feeling anxious first thing in the morning, then throughout the day you have it. Yeah, so it just becomes a cycle. And especially if you're not taking the weekend or your evenings to rest and recharge, you're just taking that stress with you into the next day. And that's where that stacking effect comes from. So for me, that was something I realized at that time. And again, it's something that I ended up living with for many, many years. And now looking back at that time, now that I have the right tools and now that I work with other professionals to help minimize some of that physical and mental burden, looking back to that time, it's really like, it's like I'm working with myself in the past, in those that I work with. So I have that to fall back on, because I knew what it was like. It was just not something that I knew I needed to deal with. And so I stayed in that cycle for 3 to 4 years until I finally went on the path of getting the certifications and the knowledge and started getting coaching for myself and learning about personal development, and that there is a different way, right? It's all it takes is someone showing you that it doesn't have to be that way. And then you can, go down a different path. You don't have to stay in that cycle.
And what would you say was your wake-up call, right? Because we all know, like you said, it will become our unconscious pattern, our habits, and kind of our normal. And for me personally, it was almost kind of the same. I, in fact, increased my adrenaline level due to years and years of my homeostasis were just based on habits completely out of control, so that this never-ending restlessness within me, etc., was very, very challenging. But it was my normal, right? So there was nothing out of normal, and except that even, how it is talking with people about, okay, I'm stressed, I am anxious, it's nothing what we have space for, not in social media, not in any kind of working environments. Most of the time there might be dedicated people to where you can have a safe space to talk with them. But what would you say was basically your wake-up call, I think, or breakthrough in order to start to shift consciously?
Yeah, that's a good question. So because I went so long with just accepting that cycle of stress as a part of my life, it really, and I was still young at the time, so it wasn't manifesting in any sort of like actual disease for me yet. Now I know that stress can lead to so many lifestyle diseases. It can actually be a precursor to virtually any lifestyle disease, even, cancer, diabetes, all of these things can be exacerbated by stress. So while that wasn't yet coming up for me, a number of my loved ones, family members, and friends were experiencing these things. So from being diagnosed with depression to my mom actually had cancer when I was going through a lot of this stuff myself too. So it wasn't anything that happened to me, but because I was seeing so many people around me being affected by these chronic lifestyle conditions, and I call them that really mindfully, right? These are lifestyle conditions. Some of them are genetic, but an overwhelming majority of again, cancer, diabetes, depression, anxiety, all of these things are created through our lifestyle, which is both good and bad. It's bad because our lifestyle creates it, but it's good because we can undo it, right? Whatever we did to cause these things to happen in our lives, we can take the opposite route and undo them consciously. So if anyone is listening and you're thinking that, well, there's a family history of these things, or maybe in your social circle, a lot of people have dealt with it, and so you're kind of destined to deal with these things, that's definitely not so. And that's why I really use the term lifestyle really mindfully there to say that, you know, just because it's happened to you, it doesn't mean that you can't reverse it. And so for me, it was just seeing my loved ones go through this over and over again. And even some of my friends who were, again, we were younger in our careers, but for some of my friends, it was really manifesting in more serious conditions. Mm-hmm. And so that's what it took for me to really seek out a different route. That's what started me down the path of getting certified, of getting my yoga training. And then eventually I brought wellness workshops. I created them from everything that I was learning from both backgrounds, both the health world and the yoga world, and I brought that into the corporate world. So the last company I worked with, I actually created workshops that were held weekly, and that was for my team at work, and it was an amazing way for us to bond and to share and really to hear how others are going through many of the similar things. So it was a really nice way to start giving back this knowledge and help others find a better way as far as their daily lifestyle goes. So.
Thank you so much for sharing. Like you've just said, this is for most of the people, like not for everybody, of course, but for many, a lifestyle that is causing many things. And I would like to and love to dive into the topic in itself, if you don't mind. So the first question is if we have any kind of lifestyle that is not serving us right now. And I was running a workshop at the beginning of this year, shortly before Corona, actually, in UK. And one of the leaders told me, again, over and over again, that of course uncertainty, something what our brain is not able to grab, is causing lots of stress. What would you say could someone start doing? And this applies, and it's probably one of the biggest things at the moment. Some people are facing layoffs, some other people having any kind of political difficulties and challenges to face. And of course, uncertainty overall due to Corona. So what would you say, how can someone start to reduce stress or become mindful and start to pay attention into the mental well-being when uncertainty is the number one cause for this kind of feeling?
Oh, I love that question. And it's so relevant because just this week I created a workshop around living with things out of our control. So I do wellness workshops on a regular basis. And that has been such a relevant topic, again, in light of all the recent events. And I've talked to so many people that are feeling those impacts, right? Loss of job, coronavirus, uncertainty around your own health, your family's health. So many things, again, are stacking, right? It's like we started with coronavirus, but it didn't end there. And there were multiple layers that are still unfolding in different countries. And so I always say that there are three different parts to our sphere of control, right? There's a small amount of things that are within our control. Then there's a slightly larger amount of things in our life that are inside of our sphere of influence. And then there's an overwhelming amount of things that are outside of our control. And so it just starts with realizing that, yes, there's a lot going on around us, and much of it we have no say over. So let's start by focusing on what we can control, that smallest piece of the pie, right? So that's your lifestyle, your daily habits, how you treat your body, your social connections. There are things that you can be doing to be supporting yourself in this piece of the pie that really matters, right? Because we can't affect an outcome of an election. We can't affect the delivery of a vaccine. And the more that we focus on those things that are outside of our control, the more disempowered we feel. So it raises our stress levels. So now not only do we have stress inside of our own personal sphere of control, so not only do we feel stressed day to day as it relates to our life, but now we're taking on the stress from the external world as well, because we're focusing so much on the news, on what's happening around us, what's happening in our country. And I know someone listening to this would say, well, it's not so easy to say. How can we not, right? It's happening outside of our home, wherever it is that we live. There's so much that is happening that we want to feel like we have control over. And so this is a big part of what I work with my clients with. And I would say that bringing it back inward. So what's happening in your life? What's happening in your body? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? What is your family life like? Your friend circles, focusing on that as much as possible to build up your resilience so that you can have more resilience in the face of those external events. And so how do we do that? How do we build up our resilience and control that small piece of our life that is in our control? So I like to talk about this in something that starts from like the most elementary, the most accessible ways to building up to some of the ways and strategies that are maybe a little bit more, I would say, advanced, some that require a little bit more time and effort. But so from the simplest element going out, the very simplest element that I always begin with, and that's because I have my mindfulness background, is our breath. So anytime that the stress starts rising, the first line of defense, the single most accessible, inexpensive, most available thing that's in our life is our breath. And we breathe all our life from the moment that we are born to the moment that we pass. So we may as well learn how to breathe more effectively. It's not something that we're ever aware of or are taught how to do. So there are different breath patterns that could be helpful in different lifestyle situations. So the first thing around stress is anytime you feel the stress response start rising, right? We're presented with a stressful email, a stressful conversation, we miss our flight, we miss our train, we break, a cup of coffee, whatever it might be happening that starts. And then if we don't undo it, it's going to build. In order to undo it, being aware of how you're breathing. So one of the physiological responses to a stressful event is shallow breathing. That's because our body physically is preparing how to run away, right? So we tighten up, we tense up, we go into more of a fetal position to prepare to run away. And that means that we're constricting our airways, our lungs. We aren't allowing ourselves to take nice deep breaths. Whereas what we need the most in that moment is the single thing that we need for survival. We need oxygen, we need deep breaths. We can live without food for weeks, we can live without water for days, and we can only live without our breath for minutes. That's why it's the most essential thing that every single cell in the body needs and that our brain needs when we're under stress. So when we're trying to get ourselves out of a stressful situation, our brain is working really hard. We're trying to figure out our response, our reaction, what we're going to do, right? We're thinking of the steps to get out of that stressful event. And so our brain and our body needs oxygen. And so the very first things that I personally do and always recommend people is that you become aware of your posture as a way to create more space for you to take deep breaths. So always being mindful of where your body is in space, right? Are your shoulders down and back? Are they hiking up towards your ears, and can you relax them down? Can you bring your shoulders over your pelvis so that you're not rounding too far forward and again constricting your torso? And from that place, can you take nice deep breaths? So with the breath, the inhale is inherently energizing and the exhale is soothing. So going back to me highlighting different breath patterns, anytime that you take a nice deep inhale and then really focus on elongating the exhale, you're going to start calming down your stress response. And this is a signal to our stress response that we're safe and it's okay to start calming down so that we can respond from a more clear-headed place. So the first thing we do is physically bring down that level of stress that we're feeling so that we can respond better. So a nice deep inhale in and a long exhale out, maybe a count of 4 or a count of 5, is going to actually start slowing down our heartbeat. So this has also been shown that the breath can actually modulate our heartbeat and start slowing it down. On the flip side, if we do energizing breath, focusing on sharp inhales, it's going to raise our heartbeat. So the breath is this amazing tool that we have with us that unless we're mindful of, we're not really using to our advantage.
So,
So,
because sorry, I don't
mhm.
want to interrupt you, but
Yeah,
because it's
go
Sunday,
ahead.
right? We have a kind of like, I hope all of us, whoever is just maybe joining us live or watching the replay, wherever you are, I hope you feel very comfortable. Would you mind to share with us just maybe a 3 guided breaths so we invite
Mhm.
our audience and feel it straight away? Because you know how it is when we talk about something and then experiencing it by yourself
Mhm.
will maybe
Absolutely.
then be the aha moment for everybody, because especially what you've just mentioned at the beginning, our deadlines, our projects, our managing or leading other people, leading and managing ourselves on a daily basis in this current time. Lots and lots of survival modes are increasing, I think, for so many of us unconsciously, and they are kind of rising until we do something. So, whoever might be now watching or listening to us, would you mind to share with us this, and everybody who is at the office or maybe before a very challenging meeting or conversation, inviting everybody to do this exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to share a couple minutes of what helps me get out of that stress mode because it doesn't take a whole lot. So even if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, this is going to get into meditation, I don't have time for that. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes. It's actually been scientifically proven that even something as simple as 3 deep rounds of breath can start triggering your rest response. So
Mm-hmm.
they could start triggering the parasympathetic system, so getting you out of fight or flight. So it can be really simple, doesn't take a whole lot of time. So the first thing I would invite everyone to do, including us, I actually saw you already start shifting a little bit as I was talking about posture, which is so great, right? Just all it takes is awareness to start creating some of those shifts. So I would invite everyone to just notice how you're sitting, maybe allowing your legs to uncross, bringing your awareness to first your seat, so the base of the spine. Do you feel really rooted and supported by the chair, the couch underneath you? And then from there, just noticing, where is your torso in space, right? Are your shoulders up and back? Are they hiking up? And can you just consciously relax them down? So thinking about your shoulder blades, just gently lowering down towards your tailbone. From there, noticing if you're looking too far down, too far up, and just keeping a nice, easy posture. So having your chin up. And from this place, already start noticing how much easier it is to take nice, deep inhales. I also encourage everyone always to find their belly breath. So our most productive breaths come from the belly. So by allowing your belly to relax and let go, so if you're tensing up any of the muscles in your abdominals, just letting them relax and let go here. Maybe if you need to scooch back towards the back of the chair to feel more supported, you can do that. You can find more ease across the front of the body that way. And from there, every inhale, starting it with the belly relaxing first. So the belly is gently going to relax and expand, and then inhaling up into the chest. So no such thing as forcing the air in, but really just allowing the breath to come into the body and letting it go softly with every exhale. So I'll get into that place too. So we'll take 3 deep rounds of breath. So taking a nice inhale into the belly and then traveling up into the chest. And exhaling out, nose or mouth, whichever feels more soothing. One more deep round of breath, inhaling through the belly and then through the chest, maybe pausing at the top just briefly and exhaling out with a long, deep exhale. And one more deep round of breath, relaxing the belly, the shoulders, the face, and exhaling out with a long, deep exhale, letting the air go. And just staying here for a few more breaths. So breathing on your own time. Once you find this posture, once you find this position, just notice what your body is telling you. In this place, you can sense your heartbeat a little bit better. You can sense your breathing pattern more. So just noticing, right? What do you need more of and what do you need less of? Those are 2 of my favorite questions to ask myself throughout the
Mm-hmm.
day, in or outside of a meditation practice. Just what do I need more of right now? What do I feel like I'll be served by? And what do I need less of? What do I need to eliminate, right?
Mm.
So staying in this place as long as possible and returning to it as many times throughout the day as possible. Just taking those breaths as we need them.
I love it. You would not believe it what happened to me. Thank you so much for sharing and for guiding. So I hope everybody who was just watching or is listening really take in exactly those deep breaths down to the belly, and you will see the difference within you because of all the reasons what you've just explained so beautifully. And what many people don't know is, and I've learned about this for the first time in India, is that there is something called the office syndrome. And I will never forget when someone told me, you've got the office syndrome. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I've got the office syndrome. What is that? Meaning exactly what you've just said, that when we sit all the time like that in front of our laptop, right, we close our chest unconsciously due to our lifestyle. And by within yoga and all the postures, you are opening your chest almost excessively, because the majority of our life in front of our phones, in front of our laptops, is basically the opposite of this natural opening for getting enough oxygen. And enough oxygen is basically the foundation of dealing with all the things in our modern life, in modern leadership, basically having analytical mind, fast decision making, adapting to fast-paced environment and all the things. So we need basically this oxygen in order to allow our brain not to operate from the survival mode, but from the prefrontal cortex, meaning like really make the decisions you want to make rather than being driven like an animal, because this is still what is inside us, right? Thank you
Absolutely.
so thank you so much for sharing. And what would you say is something when someone is now saying, okay, I want to establish a micro habit? I'm a huge fan of whenever you want to start changing something, we have the tendency to, probably like, right, people want to start with 1 hour running, 1 hour workout for kind of 5 days per week, and then you would find yourself within 2 weeks after, for example, Year's Eve, that this is nothing what you can keep up with. So I'm a huge fan of those micro habits. And talking about micro habits, do you have any kind of tool, technique, or tip for our audience to say how could they, because most of them are busy professionals, people you work with as well, right, your clients. So what is the micro habit that someone can implement apart from the briefing? And I would encourage everybody to do it in front of almost every single meeting. When you're going to sit for 1 hour, listen to someone, take a minimum 3 breaths, and then go into the meeting.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so smart. So that we start feeling encouraged with accomplishing the micro habits as opposed to discouraged by having like one huge goal that we just feel really stressed by the goal itself. So, yeah. So I love that question. I would say as it relates to the breath. So the first thing that I did, this isn't necessarily a micro habit, but it occurred to me as it could be really useful, is that we want to set up our office space, our desk space, as much as we can to support those nice deep breaths. So wherever you are, right? So many of us are still working from home. Your office setup should have a desk where you can sit next to the desk so that your elbows and your hands are supported by the desk, but it's not too far up, right? Because if our desk and if our chair is too low, our desk is too high, then what we're going to end up doing is staying in this space, right? So my shoulders are up, I'm still hunching forward a little bit to reach the desk. So we want to make sure that our office space, whether in the office or at home, is supportive to managing our stress better. So we want to make sure that our chair is adjustable so we can elevate ourselves to meet the desk where it is, so that we can have a 90-degree angle at the elbow and still make sure that our shoulders have a chance to relax down. Same, with finding a supportive chair. That's really important. We want to make sure that you have also a 90-degree angle of the knee, so that you can find some ease across the lower torso as well, so that you're not compressing your belly, your organs of digestion, so that you're not putting a lot of pressure on your lower back. So just being mindful of how conducive is your home setup and your work setup to you actually not being in that stress space. I just noticed that because you mentioned how it is that we sit when we are office workers. So just something that I wanted to make sure to mention. And if you have any questions on how to do that, if you just Google ergonomic desk setup, there's so many YouTube videos on this that you can find the most optimal setup for you. And then as far as the breath goes and micro habits, so yes, I would definitely say anyone who is someone who works on calls, maybe someone who works from home, and you just kind of have a tendency to sit from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at your desk working, maybe just leaving for lunch. A micro habit is to start setting up your meetings as much as you can so that you have at least a 5-minute break in between them. Or, you know, being mindful of that, maybe creating a culture around that with your team that, hey, when we have back-to-back days with calls, let's allow ourselves a brief break to do a few things. So the first is to be aware of how you're sitting, how you're breathing. Take a few nice deep rounds of breath. So just a few. If you can just take those 3 clearing breaths, deep, long inhales and exhales between every meeting, you're going to be down regulating that stress response throughout the day. The third thing that you can do during that really brief break is make sure that you're staying hydrated. So that is the second most essential thing after our breath. Our breath is accessible anytime. Then we have water. We do have to have clean water on hand. We have to fill up our bottle. I love it. Of course, you have that nearby. So water helps us, again, to also help down regulate the stress response. And it helps us to flush our body of the excess adrenaline and cortisol hormones that are created when we're in a stressful state. So water actually is also a tool to help prevent that stacking effect, because as soon as a stressful event happens, we breathe through it, we drink some water, and we don't carry that with us into the next part of the day. So water is amazing for helping us flush out any of those excess hormones that are related to stress. And then the third thing that you can do just on a micro level during those breaks is to get up and stretch and walk around. Even if, here's a trick that I love, if you're someone who's really prone to just sitting for like 4 hours on end and never getting up, but you are taking on the water habit, placing your water bottle on the other side of the room or in the kitchen so that you walk to it and walk back, even as long as you get up and walk for even 1 minute or 30 seconds between those meetings, you're going to start building that habit of also getting out of that sedentary posture where stress rises. When you allow yourself the chance to walk around, you actually are taking deeper breaths, more likely, because you're up and walking, so you're not in this rounded posture. And you have a chance to reset, right? These 5-minute breaks of breath, water, movement are a reset button on the stress response so that we can, again, prevent that stacking effect. So those are the 3 really simple things that if you practice them, even if, you know, once every hour is not realistic, start breaking up your long days and long stretches of work with maybe 1 or 2 of breaks like this. You'll feel a little bit calmer at the end of the day. So especially those of us who have a tendency of like feeling really tense and really having to do a lot of work to undo the workday at the end of the workday, you might notice a really big difference throughout the day as you create this habit a little bit more throughout.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is also great, and I think straight away applicable for everybody, no matter where they are. And at the end, we are going to close up. To be honest, I could talk with you for hours, just realizing we are at the end. Would you like to share something at the end with the audience?
Yeah, so I love talking about this. I love working with, again, busy professionals are kind of where I found my passion as far as health coaching and wellness coaching goes, just because that's who I used to be and that's what I know from my past lifestyle and being surrounded by such amazing, caring people throughout my entire corporate career that I just wanted to give back to so much. So I love working with busy professionals, really anyone in transition right now, as it relates to your career, that of course comes with a high degree of stress. So I would definitely encourage anyone who is in that situation, whether you're having a hard time dealing with all of that uncertainty in your life, or as it relates to your career, to seek out someone or something that's going to help you. Don't just keep doing the same thing over and over and getting stuck in that cycle, whether it's getting a coach, whether it's reading some helpful books, whether it's talking to other professionals or people in a similar place in life as you. That's so important. By way of sharing, we normalize what we're going through, right? We see that we're not alone. Oftentimes, those mental impacts that are really detrimental come up as a result of us feeling like we're all alone in dealing what we're dealing with, when it's really not the case. So many of us are going through similar things in our lives right now. So finding those people who are going to help you, or simply those who you can share with and exchange what works, right? Because we can learn from other people in our life who can share what's been working for them. As far as dealing with stress goes. And also bringing this type of information to your workplace. Right now, most of the workshops all of the workshops that I'm doing are virtual. So even if you think that, you used to have some wellness options at the office, right? Many companies have had events and like regular wellness sessions when they were at the office. You can still make that happen virtually. There's so much that could be tailored for the work from home world, or if you're returning to the office, there's a lot of different topics that could be talked about there. So encouraging your team and your company to adopt a culture around wellness and of sharing everyone's experiences and providing those opportunities. So
Thank you so much, Marina. This is something what I would invite everybody to get started with, to open up. And I normally always start with, I'm an unperfectly perfect leader, or for sure, super unperfectly perfect in all the aspects you can imagine. And the more we start to show up with the real way, the way how we are. And of course, no matter how much we know, we still can mess up by doing or applying it, right? So nobody is perfect out there. So whoever is now experiencing any kind of stress, overwhelm, you are not alone out there, and you don't have to do it alone. Marina, thank you so much. And I will, of course, tag you below our interview, and people can find you all over social media, right? I will tag you everywhere and share this in below our interview. Thank you so much for your time once again, and sending much love to Tulum.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions or want to connect, please do. I'm so open to that. Thank you.
Thank you.